Last episode, I discussed the options to choose from after completing your CPL, namely multi or turbine or instrument rating. In this episode, I'm going to continue the discussion with the ins and outs of the flight instructor rating, the misconceptions, the applications to industry, and realistic expectations of what's required. I'm going to go through all that and more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Standby star 9000, 1013, Kilo 25. Coordinating aileron and rudder, bank, balance, bank pressure rolling at 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there.
Somewhere 290,
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 116 of the Flight Training Australia podcast. From Useless Loop to Victor Harbour, Victoria River Downs to Wagga Wagga and everywhere in between. This is the podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. G'day, I'm your host Trent Robinson. Thank you for joining me. Firstly, thank you to everyone for your kind words this week and apologies for the late episode. Had a bit of a rough week with the loss of one of our dogs. I know it seems a bit silly, a 40-plus-year-old man, but dogs are pretty precious to us and it was really quite sudden. Supporting the family as well makes it all that more emotional. And then just to add insult to injury, I lost a dear family member on Tuesday. So, yeah, not the great start to the week, but it really just, it's a good reminder, I think, for us all just to make every moment count, hold our loved ones close and appreciate the moments we share with each other because you just never know. But yeah, thank you for everyone and all your kind messages. I truly appreciate it. Are you struggling a little with the theory exams? Well, Flying Theory Solutions. Ground instructor Andrew Bowmanis, I interviewed him a little while ago. He is standing by to assist. So Andrew is highly experienced. He taught me ground school back in the day and is still going strong. He'll look after all my ground school needs and I cannot recommend him enough. He'll do it all online for you. Online Zoom training sessions, full ground school courses at various dates throughout the year, or 101 tuition. So listen to him, do what he says, and you will have success. So visit flyingtheorysolutions.au to contact him and arrange your online training today. All right, instructor rating. I went through everything last week and thanks for the feedback and comments from that. I know it helped a few of you already, which is fantastic. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is the flight instructor rating. And I couldn't really include it last week because there's just simply too much to go through. So in episode 12, I did go into what's involved in an FPC, which is a flight instructor proficiency check, and adding training endorsements. But what about the whole initial thing? What's the deal with the instructor rating? And the flight instructor rating name itself in the CSRs has changed, and the concept has changed format a bit since the introduction to Part 61. And the training is conducted in accordance with the CSR Section T and MOS requirements. Training, it can be conducted in all manner of aircraft, depends on what your local flight school's got or what training endorsement you're going for. So typically a grade 3 would be in something like a 152 or 172 or maybe a Piper aircraft, single engine design feature stuff, and a 182, Tobago 286, 210, whatever's available, multi-engine, Seminole, Duchess, Baron, etc. And the list goes on. Training can also be conducted in your own aircraft, in particular, more so if you're operating a charter operation for check and training options later on. That is something that I'll talk about as well. So all these things can be done as long as the aircraft's in the airwork category and safe. It's got dual controls and that sort of thing. It can essentially be used. Now, a word of warning. I'm going to get a little, I think, controversial because I know from talking to a lot of people, the feedback and what they are being told at various places around the countryside is going to conflict with what I'm about to tell you. But the following is based on thorough research. As I say, I'm not going to say stuff on this podcast without being very, very sure, and through consultation with CASA and others, and a little bit of a practical view of the world and how it works, being in touch with industry, and most importantly, what the regs actually say versus what we think they say or should say. The good old my interpretation is. So not to mention teaching this routinely and most importantly, not rejected by CASA when I send in an application. All right, so let's go through it all and have a look what Instructor is and the different options and pathways you can choose depending on what you want to do with it. So the first part is actually quite simple. I'll just touch on the first part real quick. Instructor rating or instrument rating is typically the ultimate choice apart from the other solutions. And the one I always say is if you are keen on teaching people, if you get along with people and you love that sort of interaction, then instructing is a great pathway to go down. If you're not one of those people, no foul, not a problem at all, but the instrument rating process is probably better for you. All right, other than that, to pick what training pathway we choose, do you have a passion, as I just said, for aviation and want to teach people how to learn to fly? Or are you more interested in teaching established pilots and giving additional endorsements and ratings? Are you employed in a specific field already, or are you seeking employment? Have you been asked to do this and maybe never even thought about it? All right, so I'm going to cover all those avenues today. If you want to teach effects of controls, medium turns, cross-country navigation, that sort of stuff, well, that's all initial training delivery. So that would be a grade 3 training endorsement. That would be your first step. Now, note I didn't say grade 3 instructor rating course. I said grade 3 training endorsement. Touch on that a bit more in a sec. So this will allow you to train pilots towards the issue of an RPL through to a CPL, but it must be working for a Part 141 or 142 training provider. And this part is key. To issue a license or rating, and that then goes on to night ratings, instrument ratings, instructor ratings, etc., you must conduct the training through a non-integrated Part 141 or integrated Part 142 flight school that also holds those applicable training course approvals. Okay, so they have to have that on their flight school certificate. So this means you cannot be an individual instructor and just give someone an instrument rating. Hang on, you said, aren't I an individual instructor? Well, yes, I am. But I'm an individual instructor who holds a Part 141 flight school certificate. Okay, so that is a new option that is out now. A few of you have contacted me and asked me about it and how it all works. Some of you just being a grade 3 instructor. Now, I don't really know, honestly, why CASA offered this option, because to be a grade 3 only instructor sole school, no offense, but you're kind of a bit useless. How are you going to send people solo? You're going to have to transfer the student to another training provider and then hope that they transfer them back once the solo bit's done, because there's just no way you can do that. I really don't think they should be issuing it to anybody under a grade 2 with some level of experience. I don't see the point in it, anything less than that, but that's off topic for today. All right, so part of this process is when you read regulations and going through stuff, you need to not generalize and make one thing that seems similar mean another. All right, so with law and regulations, this can change the meaning sometimes quite significantly. All right, so even words training and flight training can have significant differences, especially when looking at privileges or limitations or how we log flight time. So just be mindful of all that. And when you read it, go through it a couple of times. All right, so what if you're not interested in doing initial delivery? Well, that's maybe you're in a charter environment, Part 135, airline, pilot, something like that. You're interested in check and training one day, either now or later on. So then the first stop would be something more like a single engine or multi-engine class rating training endorsement. And then you'd follow that up with, say, a design feature training endorsement. So that would then give you a nice rounded ability to do 61.385 competency checks, operator proficiency checks, and flight reviews. And this is really important to enable you to manipulate the controls for simulated emergencies, for example, a key difference to just being a line training captain where you're an experienced pilot, familiar with the routes and the operation and everything that you're doing, but you're more monitoring and offering advice. You're not interacting with the aeroplane very much unless you're just outright taking over and flying. All right. Something else you might do is then instrument rating, training endorsement, multi-engine, if they're not already done. They're things you'd follow on and build on later as you went along the way. Now, this is a hanging point for some flight schools, and without being rude, they're stuck in the dark ages. And the old thinking of Car 5 licensing. You go, what is this Car 5 you speak of, Trent? Well, before Part 61, all our licensing stuff was in Car 5, as in CAR's Civil Aviation Regulations, Part 5, if you want to look at it that way to sort of link it to the modern lingo. So there are some people who will still insist that, no, you have to be a grade 3 before you can possibly teach anything else. And this is just completely false. All right, so let me explain. At least this is how I explain it. So traditionally, a grade 3 applicant is usually a CPL graduate looking to embark on their career. So like I said, instrument rating, multi-engine. No, I'm going to go down the instructor path. Awesome. The fact is, though, and this is okay, they have little to no other experience other than their training itself. So some grade 3 applicants, could indeed be coming from industry or other life experience, which would be fantastic and the ultimate way instructor pathway should work, but it's just not always practical. All right, so they would be better for it, and their students would obviously benefit for it because they've got so much more they can put into their training, which is what makes an experienced instructor better than a new instructor, because they've got a lot more experience and training techniques and everything that goes with it, life experience. So 99% of the time, it's just not the case, and that's okay. Like I said, it's just not a lot of options for that. But they are training on the grade 3 instructor training course, or the training endorsement course. They're training to deliver a massive syllabus, of some 40 hours odd worth of individual lessons that build up the RPL, the PPL, and in part the CPL. Now, some schools will restrict what you teach straight up, and I do support that. A grade 3 instructor can send subsequent solos straight away, but why would you, to take that risk of sending someone solo without really knowing what a solo student looks like and whether your judgment of whether they're ready? This is all part and parcel why, I don't see how a grade 3 can be a sole instructor. That's a very hard thing to do with no real supervision unless they're being mentored and hooking up with somebody else. But anyway, CASA are dealing with that and they've got their mitigation strategies for that. Right, but there's essentially nothing stopping a grade 3 going straight into commercial training if they're capable of doing so, and that's in the best interest of the student as well. If they've come from a charter experience, the fact that they're only a grade 3 is irrelevant. They're still going to be able to put into a CPL graduate far more than a non-industry grade 3 would. All right, so this is ultimately up to the flight school and how they go about things. And generally, it's always going to be, walk before you run. And I don't have a problem with that overall. But why do you need to be a grade 3 and then a grade 2 and a grade 1 before you can then teach multi-engine and IFR and all this other stuff? Well, you don't. And this is typically, like I said, based on the historical way of how things went. So this is where the concept of an SME or a subject matter expert comes into play. And this is why CASA now don't require you to go through the old school system of working your way up to grade 1 and beyond before teaching other things. If you fly, and this goes with examiner ratings too, but again, another topic. If you fly IFR and multi-engine aircraft, this is your specialty. You have something to contribute to industry. So you most likely also will have little to no interest in teaching people how to learn to fly. Now, this may not be in mainstream schools. Often it's for what was formerly known as a Car 217 or a Car 217 as normally pronounced, which is the CARs, Part 217 in the current speak, where internal checking and training is required in an airline-style environment. And that could be anything from a regional to even something like CareFlight and the like is operated in that way. And people within those organizations hold special approvals to do the training, but it's not open like a traditional school to the general public. Those training endorsements and approvals only apply within there. If they leave that organisation, then they won't hold anything. This is all now moving into Part 119, where they will actually transition to formal instructor ratings with the applicable training endorsements. And that's all still happening now. So if you were to apply for a Grade 3, there are a few things you need to be aware of. Firstly, the Grade 3 course does not mean, and it is not, an instructor rating course. And I really want to make this clear, because I know there are some people that have had a desire to go down a check-in training path one day and have been put on a Grade 3 course. And this is just wrong. First of all, the school should have said, what is it that you want to do with this? Why are you wanting to do this particular training course? And then said, oh, actually, okay, based on your answer, you actually want to do this. And I'll get to that in a sec. But they shouldn't be doing a Grade 3 course. It's not what they're wanting to do. Add to that, some schools will also throw in a Certificate 4. Now, Cert 4, Workplace Training and Assessment, or just Training and Assessment, is typically used and needed for schools teaching a course. So through TAFEs and unis and RTO, registered training organisations, they need to have Cert 4. As a flight instructor, you do not need Cert 4. Is it helpful? Sure. Is it industry recognised training? Sure. All right. But the only schools in our aviation industry that need it are RTOs, all right, which we're typically delivering vet help, university-based training. But even then, only the ones that are doing course assessments for that particular course need to have the Cert 4. If you're an instructor doing all the bits leading up to the assessments, you don't need to hold it. It's not something that CASA has adopted yet. It was talked about many years ago, and everyone rushed out and got it, and then it all didn't happen. So we're already doing it. I've talked about this in a few other episodes before, but we already follow all the concepts and practices of Cert 4. So I don't see it changing soon, and I haven't heard any talk about it either. All right. So if you want to do it, by all means, it's useful in other industries and training aspects, but totally up to you. So Part 61, Section T says that you are a pilot instructor, and to that you add a training endorsement, at least one. So the first part is, what do you need to be a pilot instructor? Well, you need to do the PMI course, or the Principles and Methods of Instruction. That's the instructor rating part. And then you add the kind of training approval that you're seeking. So it's very different to when I did mine, which was you always enrolled on a Grade 3 instructor course. It was pretty much the only way to get into an instructional pathway, as opposed to teaching outside, within a 217. So on that, then you built up, got some time and experience, became a Grade 2, Grade 1, added multi-engine IFR, night VFR, etc., etc. Some things then were training endorsements, I guess, if you want to call them that in the current speak. Other ones were if you held the qualification and you might have done a little bit of internal training and had the CFI's blessing, then you could go and teach it. All right, but now everything's broken up into training endorsements. Now, depending on if you jump in a sim or then jump in an aeroplane, you then either become a simulator instructor or a flight instructor. But the grouping of everybody is a pilot instructor rating. And that's why this terminology, again, probably doesn't mean a whole lot, but when you're reading the regs, that's why it jumps around, because it depends on what you're actually ultimately doing with it. Subtle differences, but there you go. Right, so the Principles and Methods of Instruction course is a mandatory requirement, even if you have already completed the exam as per CASA or CSR Section T. The only exception to this requirement is someone holding a Cert 4 or a tertiary teaching degree. All right, but so you might not have to sit the PMI course, but you still have to sit the exam. Even if you sat the exam, you still have to do a PMI course unless you hold one of the other two. And the PMI is basically a teaching degree in a couple of days. Gives you the basics on how to teach and building up into everything you're then going to put into practice. So it's not really over 2 days. It will take you, well, however long the course is or whichever training endorsement you're doing. Note though, the Cert 4 or tertiary teaching degree is not going to cover everything in the exam. There's obviously all the CSRs and MOS and CASA regulatory frameworks and how it all works and training records and other bits and pieces that are specific to what we're going to be doing. So I generally recommend you still do the PMO course anyway, but just so you know how that all works. Right, so if you're going to do grade 3, this is where things have changed again. And some schools, I won't say stuck in the dark ages for this one, but some have just elected to keep doing the way they've always done it. But this will lead to excess cost. Allow me to explain. So, back in the day, we used to do 50-hour instructor courses. It was 30 hours, thereabouts, of dual training and 20 hours of what we call mutual. Now, mutual training, let me give an example. So we might go out and teach, say, medium turns. I would give you the briefing, take you all through that and discuss it and break it all down. We'd then talk about the flight. We'd go and do the flight. And I'd usually have 2 students on the course or more, but in pairs. And then once you 2 had been given the lesson, you'd go out and do mutual or practice and teach each other. You'd then come back, give me the briefing, and then we'd go out and you'd teach me the lesson again. So essentially doing each lesson briefing twice and flight time 4 times. Twice to me, once to each other. So one time you're playing student, one time you're playing instructor. So there's a fair bit there. Now, the only problem with this I kept finding was it was a bit of a case of Chinese whispers, but I would teach something. By the time I got the give back at the end of it all, it was completely different to what I originally taught, and I ended up just having to repeat the whole lesson again. So mutual has now been dropped from the requirements, which is essentially going to save you 20 hours. So some schools have done that. Some have just reduced the mutual. Some have replaced some of the mutual time with extra dual time. I will leave it up to the individual schools and their local client base. That's their prerogative to choose how they do this. But you can do a grade 3 instructor course with 1 student. You don't need to have a training partner unless they have a mutual component. Then it kind of forces that. All right. But have a look around at the schools, look at the syllabus, see what they're offering, and then, decide whether that course meets your requirements and fits the bill, because cutting out that 20 hours is obviously quite a significant saving. And I'm all for maybe replacing some of that 20 hours with something else, but should be a much less cost overall. All right. If you're going to do grade 3, the other things you need to look at is the spinning flight activity. And that is something that is applying to grade 3. You do not need to do the spinning flight activity for other training endorsements other than aerobatics. All right. So that is definitely something to look at. Have a look at what the school's doing the training in and enjoy that, because spinning can actually be a fantastic thing. And I'm an absolute advocate for doing that training irrespective, even if you just were to go and do some spinning with somebody. Fantastic skill, fantastic for spatial awareness and orientation and aeroplane and just having that skill set. The other thing is make sure that the grade 3 course you're doing includes basic instrument flight. Now, this is something that came in with Part 61, that the basic instrument flight got removed. It was not part of the privilege of a grade 3, which caused all sorts of issues. And then it had to be an add-on, which was kind of silly because we used to teach it anyway. And then you had to get a special approval to teach it again, even though you did it before. Didn't really change anything. And some people can get it and some people can't. So make sure basic instrument flight is included in the instructor course. It's really, really simple. It just goes in the syllabus and it's done. It's nothing more that needs to be done other than you do the course, the briefing and the flights, like every other lesson you learn. All right. So the other thing that happens with a grade 3, and it's unique to the grade 3 training endorsement, is that you should also get your class rating training endorsement for single engine aircraft. However, you must ensure that your examiner issues this at the time of your flight test. Now, some schools don't, some forget, and some are just dead set against it for reasons I am yet to fathom. Let's just think about this logically for a sec. If you can teach someone to learn to fly, go solo, and gain an RPL or PPL, have you not just taught them how to fly a single-engine aircraft? Yet some hold another view. And that's all part of the information, again, you need to seek when selecting a training provider if they won't give you the grade 3 and SEA at the same time. Maybe look elsewhere, because this ultimately will cost you money down the track to add it later unnecessarily. Now, why is this important? Well, this all ties into being able to conduct flight reviews. I have a whole episode on this, episode 8, and from an instructional perspective, episode 59, and how flight reviews are conducted. But in short, CASR Part 61.1175, Paragraph 6 says a flight review can be issued by a grade 1 or 2, or someone holding the training endorsement required to conduct the flight training for the rating. So this is the class rating single engine airplane. The single engine airplane is a class rating. So that is the training endorsement you'll use to conduct a flight review, not the grade 3. So ultimately, I don't really know why the grade 1 and grade 2 reference is even there. It's irrelevant because everyone should be a grade 3. To be a grade 2, you have to have been a grade 3. You can't skip it and jump ahead. And that needs to then be changed and fixed. So get rid of that. Just have the training endorsement. So if you want to do a flight review for night rating, you have to have a night rating training endorsement. You want to do someone single engine, multi-engine, have to have a multi or single engine class rating training endorsement. So you can see why the grade 1 and 2, I just don't get why it's there. It just causes all this mass confusion. Right now, if I was teaching you an instructor rating, would I be using my grade 3? No, I'll be using my flight instructor rating training endorsement. Okay. And this is the same thing with the flight review. If you've got grade 3 in single engine class, you're not using the grade 3 to do the flight review. You're using the single engine class rating training approval at that time. It's just like being a seafood chef and a pizza chef. If you're making me a pizza, you're going to be using your pizza chef qualifications, not your seafood one. Unless I guess it's a seafood pizza. Then you might chuck a little bit of both of the skills in there, hey? But let's not confuse it any further. All right. I could go into it more, but this episode is going to get long as it is. All right. So hopefully that makes things clear about the grade 3 and how that all works. So what about those looking at check and training pathway? Well, the single engine aircraft training endorsement is a little bit different to the grade 3. It's obviously shorter and a varied syllabus, and that is very much depending on who is being trained. And that is the beauty of the current CASA competency-based outcomes training syllabus. There's an ultimate syllabus, but we can do it in an accelerated format. We can do things quicker. We can take more time. And this would depend. Is this your very first instructor rating, training endorsement? If it is, well, then it's not just teaching you the basics of what it is you're seeking to be taught, but we need to do right-hand seat stuff and teaching techniques and principles, and it's going to take longer. Whereas someone who's coming to me for a second, third, or fourth training endorsement, well, they know how to fly from the right. Might be a twin, so we might do some twin right-hand seat stuff, but otherwise most of that's been dealt with. They already know how to teach. It's just really how do I teach multi-engine? So the syllabus can go faster or slower depending on who the recipient is. And that's really important. And it's also important to know how this whole single engine class rating thing fits into somewhere like up here in Darwin and the top end and companies that are going to be going into check and training. It's not something historically taught. It's really just come with the grade 3 in the past. And aero clubs and flight schools at down south are reasonably removed from its current sudden need and application now in industry. So let me explain that. So Part 119 is essentially the new CAR 217 check and training process for airlines, but also now Part 121, 135 operators. So it's in formalizing their internal check and training processes. And I think this is a fantastic thing when it actually comes into effect. It's been pushed back a couple of times now, and at the moment, CASA have not, probably smartly, given a due date. But regardless, operators are now preparing for its inevitable introduction, meaning they need to decide how they will comply and build their internal capability, or they could contract it out to individual 141 and 142 providers, and in some cases, individual instructors or examiners. Now, I'm not even going to go anywhere near all the ins and outs of 119 right now because I don't have the time in this episode. And to be fair, some of it is still being fine-tuned and formulated. So I'd rather give the final word when we're a little bit closer to it than something that might change. So single engine class rating is really useful because those companies are going to want to be able to do their own OPCs and flight reviews with their instructors, but it's almost useless without being partnered with a design feature training endorsement. So this then allows you to teach any design feature you hold. And this is irrespective of what you held at the time of the training or what your training included. So the course is typically based on a retractable undercarriage and manual propeller pitch control. However, it can be anything. If you follow me on the social media, you will have seen that I just finished some training for horizontal fall seaplane adventures, including the caravan and gas turbine engine as part of their design feature, which makes the training far more applicable to them, what their instructor has been trained for. He's not going to be flying a 210, he's flying a caravan. So it makes more sense to understand the principles and theory and processes behind gas turbine engine than running retractable undercarriage, for example. All right, so it makes more the training far more applicable to the applicant. It's far more beneficial for the organization. And I really do applaud them for seeing the safety benefits of that approach and making the training functional and useful. And this is really something that other schools, I think, should take note of, that there's a number of ways to do this. All right, so you can then start training and teaching regardless of which path you choose. You can add other training endorsements later on as you build experience in your expertise. But don't be in too much of a rush. As I will get to in my closing, to be an instructor, it is an absolute privilege and a great responsibility. Your students will be, in part, a product of you and what you put into them. So you can't totally control how they turn out. This is relying on their attitude and aptitude, among many, many other things. But you could, however, be in an airline or advanced training environment and enter the instructional market straight away in the multi or IFR training endorsements instead. There's nothing wrong with that. You're a subject matter expert in that area. That's what you should be doing. It's just that all that happens is if this is your first training endorsement, then you'll spend more time, like I said before, than someone with other training endorsements. So more over than anything else, there's going to be a standard syllabus, but it is very, very flexible. But I'm finding that a lot of schools are completely inflexible on how they go about it or how they might be able to adapt things to suit the client and what they're doing. So it's not a matter of the customer or client's always right, but why teach something or a skill to somebody out of ignorance of what they're actually ultimately going to be using it for? And this is what's really important. So there is so much customization which can be done with the training, and that's ultimately delivered and still achieving the syllabus, but it's training outside and beyond the syllabus, thinking outside the box. This is what our industry right now is desperately needing. So instead of just trying to hit minimum hours and testing a product at the end and chucking it out into industry with no clue, no disrespect, but this is what we're seeing, I implore all trainers, all flight schools, all instructors to look at what they're doing now, how they're going about it to ensure we produce the best quality, best trained commercial or private pilots we can, or ATPL pilots, whatever course we're doing, instrument rating, night rating, it all applies. There is without doubt a drop in standards across our industry right now. All right, I'll challenge anyone to disagree and I'll happily have a chat. I am now officially on the warpath, all right, to raise awareness about this issue and do something about it before it costs lives. I'm not being over dramatic. Why do we need to wait until the answer is staring us all in the face? I am probably in one of the most fortunate positions to sample pilots up here from all over Australia, from all different flight schools, fee help, non-fee help, integrated, non-integrated, small country club versus big city school. I consult with commercial operators all over Australia at all levels, charter pilots, other flight schools, airline operators. I'm not saying I'm the greatest thing around, but I can tell you now that what I see and all their feedback to me is all saying the same thing. We need to do better. We need to step things up. We need to produce better instructors. Instructors need to be aware of what they're doing and help produce better students. But that is all for another episode. All right, that's it for this week's episode. You can tell I'm passionate, but I need to be. I need to reach through and really get the message out. It's so important. And, I've managed to be awarded this Instructor of the Year award, and I'm really deciding that I'm going to be using it to try and leverage it by getting out and getting the word out, getting the message out that we need to all just sort of wake up a little bit and do better. And I hope you'll all join me, and it's inspired some of you to, take up the stand. And if you're an instructor already, help do something about it. Talk to your CFI, which is now a head of operations. Talk to your colleagues and work together and do it. And I'm only too happy to help with that. I don't know, maybe we can start an online group that meets every now and then and share ideas and stuff. I don't know. Give me your ideas. Let's do something about it. All right. I'm off for a little break for the next week and a half, going to the sunny coast. Be great having some saltwater therapy. Looking forward to that. I will be back when I get back. I will record something anyway for next week, so don't worry. Won't be without anything. But please send me all your messages. Jump on the socials. I'll be sharing photos and videos and all sorts of other fun little things, educational, entertaining. It's all there. So jump on, give me a follow, and you can also support me on Patreon if you'd like to do that. In the meantime, blue skies, stay safe, and remember the golden rule. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, everyone.